Welcome, friends of the Campus Ministry Podcast, sponsored by VS Students. My name is Clayton, and I am with our co-host, Steve Shadrack. Our prayer that our time together is that we get to inspire, equip, and encourage the collegiate body of Christ, helping them to share the gospel, make disciples who make disciples, and that we would see a wave of university students launched out among the nation. And so that's us. And if you're just joining us, we're right in the middle of a series gearing up for EDM, our conference in May. And we're getting a chance to know some of the personalities and the speakers that are going to be leading from stage in our workshops. And so our hope is that you'd get a chance to meet them off stage, hear their story, get to know them, hear some wisdom. And so that's where we're at. And so we're grateful you're joining us today.
That's right, Clayton. EDM, for you that might just be tuning in, is not electronic dance music. Sorry. It's evangelism, disciple making, and missions mobilization. We think those are the three components of the Great Commission. So this coming May, we're hosting really a historic gathering of campus-based and church-based collegiate ministries from all over America and numerous other countries in Fort Worth. And so we'd love to have you there if you're working with college students. There are a lot of things that people rally around, but for us, it's the Great Commission. How do we get back to the core of the Great Commission? And we're just calling that EDM. So as we're getting ready for this conference, we want to introduce you to some of the personalities that are leading at this conference. And you'll get to meet them in person there in Fort Worth and on stage at the EDM conference. But we wanted to give you a little sneak peek, offstage peek into their lives. Today we have a special guest. It's Martha Moore. And I've known Martha really just about her whole life. I want you to introduce yourself to our audience, Martha, but one quick word here. Martha's father, especially Waylon, and mother Clemmy, are just heroes. When I get to heaven someday, I think I'm going to go and visit their mansion from my little bungalow down the street somewhere. But Waylon, your father, had quite an impact on me, and his books and his teaching and his training. And Clayton, I don't know if you know this, but Waylon Moore really had relationship and involvement in co-laboring in ministry with both Bill Bright and Dawson Trotman.
Oh
you
gosh.
Talk about a guy that has good pedigree, right? Good legacy, good roots. And so he really impacted my life and in so many ways and so many others. And yet his greatest legacy, I think, is his two children. Martha and Bruce have been in full-time ministry their whole life, carrying on this legacy that Waylon and Clemmy have started. And I'm jealous. I'm really jealous. And I'm so thankful for you all. So Martha, I want you to take a minute to introduce yourself to our audience, but touch just for a moment too on your parents and the role in ministry they had as well.
Well, thank you so much, Shad and Clayton. I can't really speak about too many areas of my life or ministry without their names coming up and quoting them. And you don't even have to ask me to, it comes so naturally. So my parents were the real deal. They were amazing believers. They had wanted to go overseas and God shut the door. And God wanted my dad particularly to champion being a disciple maker and how to do that, especially in the local church context. But he also was asked for a number of years with the International Mission Board of Baptists to speak at their training yearly. And so over the years, what happened was group after group of brand new missionaries would go out, and some of the things that they would apply were, we learned this and we learned this in the 2 months of training. And they're like, oh, wow, that week with Waylon Moore, that's actually the stuff that's working. That's actually like discipling people. We're seeing the repercussions of that positively, the viral impact. And then they would ask him to come speak, and then he'd speak to nationals. And so in the course of his life, he literally started counting up, he'd been in 100 countries. And so that definitely was a huge game changer for me, and being influenced that missions is possible and normal and exciting and impactful.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
What a legacy he lives behind. And I can picture
Mm.
his big smiling face and his laugh. And
Yeah.
of course, your brother has pastored for
Bruce,
decades now. I
yes,
met him
in
as a
Tampa.
college student.
Oh
And
yeah, I
you just
remember.
have a great family, Martha. But tell us about you. We want you to introduce yourself to our audience
Sure.
before we start drilling you with questions.
Okay. Well, so I grew up in Tampa, Florida. Was not the most popular kid at the lunchroom table, but had decided to follow Jesus at a young age and really took
Yeah.
it seriously, and helped to lead a Bible study in my junior high and my high school. And when I went off to college, I went to Baylor. My dad had gone there, so that was kind of like a legacy thing. Yeah, go Bears.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I wanted to immediately plug into a ministry where they were making disciples. I became a part of something like a freshman challenge group, a discipleship
Yeah.
group through the BCM, the Baptist Campus Ministry. I was loud, like I always am, but way less confident, way less confident about social settings or yeah. But I had been influenced by my dad. Campus ministry is great. This is where it really happens because, like you said, he had been part of the early stages of Crew and NAVS and other organizations. And so I had been influenced because we had all these missions conferences. Actually, when it wasn't as such a big deal, like, hey, let's have the global missions conference, my dad was like, well, let's go on mission trips and then let's bring in all kinds of different mission staff when they're home. So I, at a young age, or definitely in the teens, I thought, I think I'm going to end up overseas one day. But I got a degree in English as a second language in education, and thought, I should probably use that degree, earn some money. So I actually worked as a high school teacher of English for 2 years. Another thing that influenced me, and then went on to seminary. But another thing that influenced me, my very first semester, I took this course about prayer, and they talked about how you should have an hour a day in prayer. And I was like, oh, I guess I should really make that commitment. So I'm not doing that now. I have to be very confessional, but that kind of set the course. So being involved with BCM, knowing I want to help lead young ladies to Christ. I joined the international club. How can I get involved in helping, witness to international students? All of that kind of started in my early days as a freshman with the idea, one day I think I'm going to be on the mission field.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Wow. So first off, Martha, you and I, you've done some writing for us. You're one of our featured writers. And we've talked about ministry in your current context, which I want to hear more about that in a second.
Yeah.
But I didn't know you were like collegiate ministry royalty. Like I would have ironed my shirt if I'd have known all these things. Like this was, I didn't know you're from the long line of this royalty here.
Oh man.
I feel underdressed, but so
I
Martha,
have to tell you, I ended up in California and Vancouver. So I before I moved to Europe, I was in Vancouver, Canada, and I was in Los Angeles doing campus ministry. And my
yeah, two
dad,
easy places,
oh my
places,
gosh.
right?
So my dad, when I said I'd already been in Vancouver, very tough ground.
Yeah.
Very, very postmodern, created the word postmodern and all the other words that go behind that. And then LA, my dad, I don't know why he thought LA was worse than Vancouver, because it wasn't. It was like the Bible Belt. But anyway, compared to where I'd been. And he wasn't really excited about me moving there. And he wasn't really excited about my raising support and, going into campus ministry. And, is this really a responsible thing for me to do? And I just had to remind him, Dad, you used to hitchhike to go to Bible conferences. You had like no money in your pocket. You would trust God. He had all these miracle adventures. You worked with college students. So he's like, oh yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Oops.
Yeah.
Well, it's a, I mean, and all of us, like it's it's one thing to trust God with my life, and then it's this next level of faith to trust God with my children's life and say, oh, just like God provided for me, he'll provide. But that's the story of the Old Testament. Remember, he's faithful. He'll do it. So lesson to all you parents out there. My goodness. Well, Martha, catch us up. So you've been in Vancouver, you did LA, but now you're in Europe. Tell us kind of what your ministry journey in Europe has been, because you didn't just like get on a plane at LAX and then like miss the stop in Tampa and end up in Europe. So how did that come about?
Well, I had been a part of some amazing ministries, and they all had a high regard for church planting or being a part of a very, very solid church. One of my long distance mentors was Max and Sandra Barnett, that I really revered, and they had trained people who went to new workplaces. And Neil and Melinda Walker I worked with in LA, and some amazing people in Vancouver, but it was always connected with a lot of younger churches, or, well, we want to send you after graduation to go help in a church plant. So that's what I was looking for. So I was asking with the IMB, where can I go? I will do campus ministry, and who's going to do the church planting, and let's team those together. So the first place that I got sent was Eastern Germany. So like the former GDR, former communist part of Germany, is where I got sent. And there was no church plant there. There was a church of about 100, 120 people. But over the years, what happened was I said, well, one of my leaders said, why don't you do something and franchise it? So I was always with the idea, work yourself out of a job, which is always a good thing to do. I think it's awesome when people say, I've been in the same place for 35 years and I planted deep and long, and that just wasn't God's journey for me. And so I went to Eastern Germany with the idea, how can I get out of here and raise up laborers? And so God was so kind. And I remember walking through the streets and walking around the campus in the chemistry building, and I was prayer walking, and it was literally like, but I'm the only staff. I wouldn't choose that. I'm single. I think I need, some workers. And it was like it's like how David said, you hold me by my right hand. And I'm like, God, I'm walking around the city, but actually nobody knows, but I'm actually holding somebody's hand. It's you, because I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know the goal. I know the methods. I took one of the early illustrations of shad in this funnel shape, and I kind of created our own thing. Or I would ask students, where should we meet? And they said, so they would give me hints about where to meet, but I still knew it's about disciple making, and it's how can the laborers be raised up from the harvest. And so God gave me people that came to Christ, and then they would become the church planters later. And then I moved to a new city and left it with the Germans and moved to the north to Braunschweig. Did that for about 6 years, handed it over to the Germans. And so God was faithful. Ended up in Spain for 2 years, handed it over to Americans and Spaniards. That only lasted 7 years. I wish that were still the case, but just God continuing to kind of write his journey with me until I got invited in 2016 to come to Amsterdam. So I've been in Holland since 2016 and gutting it out here in the trenches of, capital city. And lots of atheists, and lots of possibilities to sow seed here in Amsterdam.
I remember last time I was in Amsterdam, I was talking to an 18-year-old young guy. We were on the bus there. I struck up a conversation, asking him, he'd grown up there in Amsterdam. He looks at me, he goes, I've been to cities all over the world. He goes, and this is the weirdest city in the world. He said he grew up in Amsterdam, and he was calling his own city, the weirdest of all. And I thought, which we've been to Amsterdam several times, as we're flying to and from Ukraine and things. So it's I won't say weird, but it's very unique. I know that. So
yeah, it is.
Well, you've got experience, Martha, working with students in North America. You've got now tons of experience in different countries in Europe. I want to ask you what the differences are that you observe working with college students in North America versus, Europe, but also what do you see God doing among college students? So those are my two biggies that I want to ask you.
That's good, Shad. Thank you. Well, first of all, let me say what the sameness is. I think students know if you love them. They can sense, because I kept thinking, there's no way I'm this cool. I cannot keep up with the trends. I mean, one thing that is interesting though, also sameness. So if you try to get them, even if you miss it, it's okay because you're trying, but you love them, and love trumps trendiness. Love trumps trendiness. So if you're authentic, authenticity trumps trying too hard. You see, I remember a missionary told me years ago, they were like leaning into the fact they were from Texas. And I was like, okay, well, put it this, you should not wear cowboy boots over here. Okay. That's too much leaning in. But they had like a Texas star in their kitchen. And anyway, but I told people, people had recommended me, be who you are. Like adapt, but be who you are,
That's good.
And so you're trying to, it's like the two train tracks, but that is the same. What is not the same is you do not have kids coming from youth group that like, well, there's thousands of amazing youth groups all over the country, and they're going to send their kids to college, and you hope that you'll meet some of them to be some of your core people. I know Shad says, don't start with believers, start with the non-believers. I'm like, well, that gets pretty easy. Especially in Spain, it was like, well, we'll start with the non-believers, and we did English club because it made sense there. Sports is not a god here. People play sports, but it might be for a university kind of like crew, rowing club. But it's more kind of part of the Greek system, or it could be like the rowing club, or it could be just, I'm a part of a climbing club, but it's in the city. Other people could join. So they don't have their own stadiums. Campuses are spread out. So that's very different. Rarely would you say, when you say campus, you mean which campus? The science campus of the university or the humanities campus of the university? So you know what I'm talking about. So that changes the way you kind of wrap your arms around how do I meet the students? The dorms aren't connected with the university. There's like 30 residence halls all over the city. It's like companies that own a residence hall system. Different companies. So even that of, I will reach the dorms. I pray for Bible studies in dorms, but it's a very different system. So, and Amsterdam is different than some other cities just because there's 100,000 university students here.
Wow.
But we're in a capital city. And so, we're not the only place in the world that has that, but I'm just saying that is a difference. The spiritual difference, the geographical difference, the way they identify, they're not wearing university. If you see somebody wearing University of Amsterdam sweatshirt, they're not from Amsterdam. They're a tourist that's like, wearing university. So they wouldn't do that. They don't have that kind of sense of identity. The tough thing is I meet student after student after student that have no background with Jesus. Or if they do, there's also in the Netherlands, there is something called the Bible Belt. But they are people that may have a lot of traditions where the service, I would not say, is a visitor-friendly worship service. They may tell you, could you wear a dress when you come to my village for the worship service? They could even be extreme that the men and women are on different sides. So it's a different kind of Bible Belt. And so how is that going to translate when you're trying to share your faith with people? So it's very tough ground. It's like one of those, you're going to plow. No, you're not going to plow the ground. You're not going to sow the seeds. You're going to have to pull up the rocks kind of thing. And the prejudice that people have. So one of the things I train teams when they come and do surveys is please ask the follow-up question. If you say, what question would you ask God doing a survey? If there is a God, let's add that in there. If you think there is a God, what question would you ask God? Sometimes they say, well, I don't think there's a God. So it's kind of it's like a mute thing. And so I'll say, well, what do you think your friends might ask? I will tell you 90% of the students come up with a question for God. Even though there's so many that don't believe in God or very estranged. So that tells me God is whispering to people. Another question I ask students is, in our survey. Let's imagine, I love to hear stories. Let's imagine you had something happen in your life that you thought, oh, that's a coincidence, but ooh, that was like the way things came together. I mean, it's sort of like a coincidence, but is it really coincidence? Could it be like fate? Or maybe you've been somewhere and you thought, I feel like there's something bigger than me at play in this situation, or I sense something bigger than me. I'm trying to get at this existential or even spiritual realm that people maybe have encountered, and I'm trying to help them connect the dots. So what I'll see is I'll see people literally thank me for the conversation, or a guy in a survey have the other guy say, come over here, I want you to do this with her. This happened. And then as I'm telling this guy's story of where he felt like there was something more at play, then his buddy says, no, man, that's just a coincidence. He's like, no, it's not a coincidence. That was my dead grandmother making that song go on the radio, literally. And then they start debating. So a lot of the times it's like I'm in the very much minus part of the Ingalls scale. And I'm trying to, nudge that forward so that I can share with them about Jesus. But back to the point of asking questions, I've encouraged teams. So they said, oh, I'm an atheist. And then you want to start giving them some apologetic thing. I think it's wonderful that I took a class on apologetics in seminary. Do you know why they said they're an atheist? Did you ask them to tell their story? Oh, well, no. I mean, there's, and Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. I go, yeah, I believe that with all my heart. I would die for that. John 14:6. But you haven't heard his story yet. And so everyone's got layers of things in their lives, and we cannot give them fast answers because I said, you're speaking Chinese, but they're speaking Dutch. Do you understand? Kan jij dat verstaan? Als ik zo spreek, kan jij dat begrijpen? Did you understand what I just said? No. You think you understood his English. I bet you didn't understand it. There's layers of stuff you need to know. Yeah. And then, but it could be in 10 minutes, you might share the gospel, but make sure that you feel like you've heard a little bit.
Yeah. I know Clayton's going to jump in here with some questions for you, Martha, but I was trying to picture myself. I've used a question over the years a lot in different settings. I wonder how it would work in Amsterdam if you were to, I love the survey questions you're asking. If you could ask God a question, that is a cool question right there. I love that. How about this one, Martha? How do you think this would go over? You say, if, big, strong on the word if, right? If you could know God in a personal way, would you want to? How do you think that would go over in Amsterdam? Do you think that would be one they would think about or respond to, or they just would immediately reject it? Or what are your thoughts there?
I think that would go over well, Shad. I think that's well put. I need to try that. Yeah. What doesn't go over questions that assume a whole lot of Bible facts, like if God were to say, how would I let you into my heaven? First of all, they're like, no, I don't believe in a heaven. Nope. Don't believe in a God. Next question. So when I used to use those questions, I would go, hey, da, 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 and no, hey, da, 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 no, hey, da, da, no. And would you like to get more information about our group? No. Would you be interested in joining our WhatsApp chat and we could keep you posted? No. Would you want to meet again for coffee? No. I was like, wow, we've got to, people do what makes sense to them. So I tell myself, if it's not making sense, it's not their problem. It's my problem. I'm not speaking your language. That's good. So I think that would be a great question. Thank you, Shad. I'm going to try that out.
Yeah. Try it out. Let me know how it goes.
I will.
Okay, Clayton, take it away, brother.
A good case study.
Yeah.
Man. Well, and Martha, one of the things I love, because you actually wrote an article on and I forget what we titled it, but it's the best apologetic is listening. And you kind of walk through some of those surveys, and that is so key. And I'm so excited you're going to be EDM for a couple of reasons. One, some of your staff are going to be there, and so it's going to be amazing. You're going to you're going to be on one of our panels opening night, Tuesday night. You're on one of our panels with Shad and a couple other campus ministry legends.
Not nervous at all.
It'll be great. It'll be great. I'm going to host that panel. You'll do great. We'll give you the easy questions and give Shad the hard ones. So we'll ask Shad if you wanted to know God in a personal way.
If you can know God in a personal way, would you want to?
Would you want to?
And why?
Scale of 1 to 10, how saved are you? Things like that. But you're also leading a workshop called 5 Ways to Mess Up Sharing My Faith in the Post-Christian West.
What a great workshop.
Which is going to be amazing. But you would there be other workshops that you would be able to do? And one of the things you said is how to turn a contact into a small group, which is a really great title. We're going to have to tease out that idea maybe and do a seminar or a webinar on that. Because that's just so good. But Martha, in our time here, how do you turn a contact into a small group? What does that look like?
Well, one of the things that, again, for moving to different places is the challenge is you're landing in a city, you're parachuting down. Can you start something from scratch? Not everybody can do that. And that is totally okay. But what you end up with is most people would say, I was able to make a contact. I did this. I've talked to different people serving overseas or in a city. I know this person. I go jogging with this person. My friends' kids play with this family. We barbecued with them. I met, usually we can make contacts with people. We can meet people. But then the struggle for some is how do you really form a group, make a group happen and a synergy, to put people together versus I read the Bible with one guy. Tomorrow I read the Bible with this girl, and so I'm like, you have to gather to get synergy and for it to multiply and be a disciple making movement. You have to gather people, or to be church if you're being church. And so, so I definitely want to have spiritual conversations. I want to do surveys, hand out flyers, pray and invite. And then I start making a list of names, or I start mapping like an oikos map, or I call them the bubbles. I met you at this location, and who else did I meet at this location? Or I met you through this guy, and then you have a girlfriend. And then, so you start mapping out just to kind of keep track. Who am I meeting? Where do I see people, who's God leading me to? Where do they live or working? And I always say, you want to know about student ministry. You want to know, where do students study? Where do they live? And where do they play? And then you want to live somewhere close to one of those. Where do they live? Where do they study? Where do they play? And then I've talked to people before, and they would say, I ask, where are you located in your setting? Oh, well, it was so expensive. We're way out in this suburb. I'm like, okay, so they will never come to your place. That's okay. But I mean, yeah. So you want to have spiritual conversations with these people, you want to connect the ponds. And that's a whole nother illustration. So you want to meet somebody and I meet you. If I have a Christian friend, you have people in your pond that you're fishing for. I have people in my pond that I'm fishing for. We need them to meet each other. And I need to help you be another believer with your not yet Christian friends. And you need to know that concept of belong before believe. They are going to have to get a sense of belonging in your group, or you feel like you belong in their group before they're going to believe. So if you can't be invited to someone's birthday party, or they're not invited to your birthday party, or you guys can't go shopping together or drink coffee together, all you can do is we do Bible stuff together. We need to have some sort of a friendship that we can be like, hey, let's go pick out, hair things together, So for a girl, I guess. So I want to gather them together, and another concept is you don't wait too long before you start. I've had people, they know all these people, and they're like, I don't know quite how to pull the trigger. And I go, good night. You've told me 20, 30 people in this city. Why don't you, I don't know if it's the right study. I'm like, just start something. Don't overthink it. Just start. We're experimenting. So I use the word experiment a lot because a lot of us are afraid of failure. Or I don't know if I'm going to do it right. Or, is the Holy Spirit leading me? And, even as a catalyst that I am, I'm like, oh, I don't know, I'm just start it and then fix it next week. You're like, oh yeah, I can, we're going to shift this a little bit,
Yeah.
I have a whole sheet on 16 ways to ruin a small group Bible study. So I do have, more things you can do wrong. You want to make it reproducible. What's the best location? I met in my apartment. We have met in a student dorm before. We meet in cafes a lot. But wherever it is, it needs to feel neutral for the students. Anybody that goes and I go, where are you going to meet? I don't know why this seems to be a default in some settings. They'll go, we have a place at the church. The church is going to let us. I go, the city's full of places. The city's cafes, Starbucks, bars. You have to understand my context when I say that, but just places where people normally gather, not to get drunk, but just snort. The city's full of them. You don't have to rent some place or get some church to, so make it welcoming. There's no wrong answer. So when people come, I do not correct them. This is not a Bible study. It's a small group discussion. I facilitate. And again, now this is not discipleship group. This is people. I've had a student say, I just think Jesus was now he's sitting here reading the Bible with a group of students. Okay. He's already made a huge leap. And he says, I just think Jesus was like a charismatic cult leader. Do I correct that? No. I hope he'll come back. I hope we can talk afterwards. I hope I can meet with him one-on-one and share the gospel. But I'm not going to out him that he doesn't agree with the Bible because we're discovering together. So I let wrong answers go. That's another thing that you really have to learn. We have no worship. We don't have music. If I go to a book club, they don't start pulling out the guitar. I'm like, I thought it was a book club. Do I have to sing? I don't even like my voice. No long prayer. We have one person pray at the end and we say in front of the group, Elena's going to pray at the end. We ask Elena and she volunteered to pray at the end so that they don't think, oh no, next week it's my turn. Do we go around the circle? So several things that we do in the way the small group is done to make it reproducible, welcoming. And then I would encourage leaders. My dad used to say, so I'll quote Dad, Chad, what's the biggest thing you've asked God to do today? Oh, Lord, bless the food. No, we want to ask him for nations. I ask him for things that I have not seen happen in this city by a long shot. And little voice inside of me, my inner voice, never listen to that inner voice, listen to God's inner voice. My little voice inside of me says, there will never be a dorm Bible study on every floor in this dorm. I'm like, shut up. I'm praying it anyway.
Good.
I'm praying for revival.
That would be quite the article or podcast itself, Clayton, would be. I'm curious, 16 ways to mess up your small group, I'm sure I could come up with more than that. I've made about every mistake there is, My next book, by the way, is the top 50 mistakes I've made in ministry. But I haven't been able to narrow it down to 50 yet, Martha. That's my problem. Well, we're gonna start winding this down, Martha. You've been so gracious to spend some time with us and to come to EDM and bring your staff, fly in from Europe like that. We've got a number of countries that are represented at this conference, and but we don't want anybody to miss it. I think that's part of one of my burdens is there's individual college workers and college pastors and that are spread out across different parts of the United States and other countries that maybe they don't have a tight knit group like the Navigators or the Crew or the BCMs or something. There's thousands of them, and they would so benefit from coming and rubbing shoulder with hundreds of other workers who are trying to focus their lives, their ministries on winning students to Christ, building them up as disciples, sending them out as world changers. So do a quick commercial for us, if you would. Why are you choosing to be part of this conference, and what value will it add, to other ministries and college leaders if they come and bring a boatload of their staff as well?
Absolutely. We are still in the middle of the semester in May, so it is not convenient. We're flying from Europe for this. It's not convenient in a lot of ways, but I know that for me and my staff in Germany, it is so helpful to get the fire of passion of other people that are doing the same thing, that are running the race the same way that you are, looking for partnerships. These are the people that we may say, a month down the line, okay, let's call, let's Zoom. I want to pick your brain on
Yeah.
something. So long-term mentors, long-term friendships, partners that could come over and serve with us. So we want a fraction of the action of whatever God's doing around the world. And the best way to do that is podcasts like these, but also live in person, rubbing shoulders with people. We're so excited.
That's great. Yeah. Clayton, a fraction of the action. That was
The
a phrase
action.
her dad would use all the time. Would you want a fraction of the action? That's a Waylon Moore statement right there.
Is.
Man, sign me up. That is great. Man. Well, friends, there you have it. Thanks for tuning in. And I hope that you do get a fraction of the action at EDM. But wherever you're at, wherever you're listening, wherever you're watching, I hope it's a beautiful day on campus. And just want to encourage you, keep doing it. Keep sharing the gospel. Keep making time for students. Develop student leaders. Challenge them to give up their small dreams and change and engage nations with the gospel. You're making an impact, and we're grateful for you. And Martha, thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for making time for us.
Thank you.
We're stoked that you and the Connexxion Europe team are going to be with us at EDM. It just means a lot to us. So it's an honor.
Thank you.
And as we get this podcast out on our different audio and video platforms, there'll be a link there to Martha and to Connexxion Europe and what she's doing there. Mm-hmm. And if you want to say, Martha, how do we how can we partner with you in some way? How can we send some of our graduates over to work with you? Or how can there be a summertime team? Or they're just she's the kind of person that wants to partner and is going to be thinking creatively to get you and your people involved in some amazing grassroots, boots on the ground kind of campus ministry in Europe, which is obviously very different and many times more challenging than it is here in the States, But we're thankful to have you, Martha, and we're thankful, Clayton, for your leadership, brother, and that this website that we've been developing for years and years is viastudents.org. If you'll go there, there's just masses of tools and resources and articles and webinars but a lot of it unapologetically is focused on EDM. We appreciate all these different topics and causes and issues and things that are floating all around us, but how do we get back to and stay on that Great Commission road? That's kind of what we're focused on in trying to serve the collegiate body of Christ around the world to really say no to a lot of things that can be exit ramps in order to stay on that main road that Jesus wants us on to make disciples of all the nations, to be his witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, to the uttermost parts of the earth. And so if you haven't signed up for this conference, I think you'll be tremendously encouraged and challenged. And don't come alone. Bring some of your key staff connections with you, if you would. So until next time, we're grateful to have you as ministry friends and partners and subscribers. And so God bless.